What is up, my fellow wrestling fanatics? It is your fellow fanatic here, Hollywood Steve, with another episode of the Hollywood Steve Wrestling Podcast. Today we're going to be reviewing Tuesday night's episode of NXT. But before we do any of that, make sure you guys hit that like button, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, and make sure you guys are sharing this video. Alright, let's get into it. So NXT opened... NXT opened with JC Jane on X talking about saying how after 1 week of being the NXT Women's Champion, she already has the women's division. She already has the women's division all over on her butt, all over her. She put herself over by saying she is beatable. She put herself over saying if she's so beatable, how was she able to beat Stephanie Vauquer and then Laney Reed? And she then said that she is the greatest women's champion of all time, and soon everyone will recognize it. Then we got from last week, we got a video from last week, Ava, the NXT general manager, telling JC that starting which was Tuesday on NXT, that there'll be a women's eliminator tournament, and the 4 women out of that will go on to a fatal 4-way on June 24th to determine JC Jane's opponent for her NXT Women's Championship, which will be defended at the All Women's PLE Evolution 2. Then NXT opened with the first of 4 women's Evolution Eliminator tournament matches. Thea Hale versus Jada Parker. And Thea came out she came out, I like how Corey Graves said that she came out like she was shot out of a cannon. But Jada took control and slowed down the match. Thea hit a nice sliding clothesline, sending Parker to the outside and drove her into the steel stairs. But that offense did not last long. Jada got her and Thea back in the ring and regained control of the match. Jada went for the hypnotic, but Thea countered it with a Kimura lock and kept it on for pretty much the whole match. And Parker visually tapped out, but the ref did not see it, of course. And Jada hit the hypnotic and advances to the next. Advances to be the first participant in the women's fatal 4-way. Next we got Briggs and Inamura versus Elijah. We did not get a match, but we got Briggs and Inamura and Elijah backstage discussing their 6-man tag match against Trick Williams in First Class. Then Hank and Tank, the men's NXT Tag Team Champions, walked in and said that whenever they want, Briggs and Inamura have a tag title shot waiting for them, because they want to be fighting champions. So they want to give the guys Briggs and Inamura a chance. And then Obafemi, the men's NXT champion, walked in to wish, he just wished the guys good luck. And then Trick walked in, and he and Oba just kind of sized each other up. Then we got a video package for Blake Monroe, a.k.a. Mariah May, formerly of AEW. getting ready to sign her NXT contract and make it official. Then we got the second of our four Fatal 4-Way Women's Elimination Tournament matches. Kalani Jordan versus Lash Legend. Lash started out with a shoulder tackle and of course some smack talk, and took out let me see here. Hang on. And some smack talk. And Kalani took out Lash Legend with a dive to the outside. And then after the ad break, Lash had Jordan hit Jordan with a stalling suplex, but Kalani countered. Lash Legend countered with a massive clothesline for a 2 count. Kalani hit a code breaker after being in a over-the-shoulder backbreaker. Jordan hit sliced bread, a 5-star frog splash for a 2 count. Lash Legend countered the split-legged moonsault attempt, and then hit her finisher. I cannot remember. I can't remember her finisher. Right now it is escaping me. And then Kalani went for a 450 frog splash, but Lash got her knees up and hit Jordan with her finisher for the win. Then we got a recap of the drama and infighting going on in the D'Angelo family between Tony D'Angelo and Stacks. After the video recap, Luca Crucifino and Tony D'Angelo were backstage, and while Tony was waiting for Luca, he was on the phone, and Tony asked him where in the heck he'd been. He said, forget about it. As Crucifino tried to explain, he said, I'll see you in the ring. And after the ad break, we got Tony in the ring, and Luca and Tony addressed everything going on with the family, and he said all he wants is trust and loyalty. After Stacks betrayed him, and as Luca was about to give Tony his answer, Stacks interrupted and said to Luca that he knows what to do next. And as Luca trying to defend Tony, he goes to lay in a punch, which is meant for Stacks, but Stacks ducks out of the way, and Luca nails Tony. So the question remains: Did Luca mean to hit Tony, or was that punch meant for Stacks? Or was it all a ploy? Was it all part of Stacks' plan? We will have to continue to find out to see. And then we got Trick Williams, the TNA World Champion, in the locker room with First Class, AJ Francis, and Casey Navarro. And AJ told Trick that Casey Navarro injured himself during training and he could not wrestle. But AJ Francis said to fear not. He and Casey Navarro had a solution because they said that's what First Class does. So we are getting Wesley and AJ Francis and Trick Williams versus Josh Briggs, Inamura, and Elijah later on in the 6-man tag match. And after the ad break, we have a little Chase U vignette, and as Connors, I apologize. I forget the other guys. I forget the other guys' names. Connors and help me out in the comments, guys. I'm drawing a blank on the 2 new students for NXT. I know Connors and I forget the other guy, but as Connors was trying to ask a couple of questions here, and Andre Chase just kept shutting him down. Then Connors and his tag team partner, they just walked out of the classroom. And his tag team partner turned back to Mr. Chase and said, looked at Mr. Chase and said, Andre Chase and said, what a shame. What a shame. Then we got a recap from 3 weeks ago in the match between Ethan Page, the NXT North American champion, and Ricky Saints, and how Saints suffered what they're calling acute trauma to his larynx, which is like right here. Which is like right here. So obviously Ricky Saints can't. He's had trouble talking the last 3 weeks. He's not been able to talk. From Ethan Page delivering a twisted grin to Saints on the leg on the leg of a steel chair outside the ring. Then we got Ethan Page to the NXT North American champion, Bradley Baylor, Rick Smokes, and the Evolve champion Jackson Drake from Evolve in the locker room. All of them reveling, you know. So we have all four of them reveling, you know, reveling in the number Page did on Ricky Saints 3 weeks ago. And then Ricky Saints walked in and said that he looked Page directly in the eyes, directly in the face, and said he would see him next week. So next week looks like we're getting Ricky Saints versus Ethan Page. And then as after Ricky Saints walked in, Jackson Drake jumps in and said that if he wanted to get to Ethan Page, that Saints was going to have to go through him, the Evolve champion. And Ricky Smokes, of course, chimes in and said that Page would have to again go through the hottest faction on Wednesday nights on Tubi, that being the Vanity Project. Then surprisingly, Ashante the Adonis pipes up and said that says to Saints that he was outnumbered, and Saints looks over Adonis' shoulder and says, "Really? Because I don't see anybody." Page and his crew had walked out of the locker room and left Adonis all alone with Saints, and Saints looked at him, and they had a little back and forth, and he goes, "See you soon, Playboy." Then we got the arrival of none other than Blake Monroe, and they're doing this. They're doing this as her persona, her character, whatever you want to call it. They're doing it as like a I Dream of Jeannie. It was if you guys have seen it, was a sitcom back in the 70s. And so that's kind of how they're doing this with Blake Monroe. But we got the arrival of Blake Monroe, and then we got our 6-man tag match between Elijah Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura versus Trick Williams, AJ Francis of First Class, and Wes Lee. And before we even got to the match, another ad break. And coming out of that ad break, we got Javon Evans, Tavion Heights, and Ren Sinclair of backstage. And Tavion Heights was telling Ren Sinclair how Charlie Dempsey he was saying how Charlie Dempsey's not listening to how he wanted to wrestle Dempsey and prove himself. That's all he wanted. He wanted to prove himself, and if he wins, then he gets to leave. He gets to leave the NQCC, and looks like we're trying to split the NQCC and have everybody going off and doing their own thing. He said that he thought Ren was going to talk to Charlie about it, and Ren said that talking to Charles, as she calls him, is challenging and requires nuance. And Javon asked her again whether Javon Evans goes, "Oh, did you talk to him or not?" And Ren just kind of paused for a minute, and she said, "No." Then Jasper Troy walked in, and Javon Evans, he goes, complimented Jasper Troy on his match last week against Obafemi. Said it was a really good match. Just paid him a really nice compliment. He said, and he said his time would come eventually, but I mean, he said that his time would come, but he said not for the young OG, but not before the young OG's time comes. And Jasper Troy just looked at him and told him to get out of his face. Then we get Dempsey walking in, and Javon Evans said point blank that Tavion, he looks at Dempsey and said Tavion doesn't want to be in the NQCC anymore. Basically, point blank, just put it right out there. And Dempsey told Evans that he needed to stop sticking his nose into NQCC business. And if Tavion wants out of the group, Dempsey said that next week he would have to wrestle Javon Evans. And of course, Evans was like, "That's not cool." He goes, "That's not cool." And Charlie needed, and he goes, he looks at Charlie and goes, "You need a hug." And that's exactly what Ren Sinclair did. She gives Charlie a hug, and Charlie Dempsey had this look on his face, just like, "Don't hug me." I loved Dempsey's great. Dempsey is great. And then Ren looks at Tavion like, "Are you gonna get in on the hug? Are you gonna get in on the hug action?" I thought that was great. And then we finally got our 6-man tag match after all that. After all the ad breaks and after all the backstage stuff, we finally got our tag match, our 6-man tag. And after a strong start from Wesley, Inamura made the tag to Briggs, and he had some pretty high-powered offense until AJ Francis got the tag. Then Briggs made the tag to Elijah, and Francis got the tag to Trick Williams. And after Elijah hit what looked like a modified old school, which The Undertaker made famous, Elijah added a Meteora, which looked really cool, which looked awesome. Then Trick hit a nice sidekick, and Elijah rolled outside to the outside of the ring. Trick and his crew tried to attempt some high-powered offense, but it was thwarted. The offense was thwarted by Josh Briggs, who took control of Trick Williams in the match, and then Briggs got a hot tag got the hot tag from Yoshiki Inamura on Trick Williams. He got Williams on the ropes, but of course High Rise jumps up onto the apron, and Wesley ran in and took advantage. AJ Francis and Inamura were in the ring after the ad break, and going back and forth after the ad break, and Wesley and his team were in control. Francis and Lee hit a Poetry in Motion on Inamura, and then Inamura got the tag to he then got the tag. Briggs got tagged in. Lee got the tag. AJ Francis came in, and Briggs got the tag to Elijah. But Inamura got up on the. We had some back and forth. Inamura was a legal man in the ring. Inamura got up on the top rope, did his thing on the top rope where he just bounces, and hit the frog splash and pins the TNA World Heavyweight Champion Trick Williams for the win for him, Briggs, and Elijah. Wow. That was a really good. I was like, wow. I was thoroughly impressed with that. I was like, oh my gosh, I could not believe that. I was like, oh my gosh, wow. That was awesome. All right, then we got, after that we had Sol Roca and Zarya backstage, just talking about everything that's going on with the women's division and the, and the their Zarya's match later, and hiding kind of obviously not in the shadows is Tatum Paxley. And after the ad break, we had Ava, the NXT general manager, in her office with Robert Stone, the former sheriff of TNA, an Evolved manager, or prime minister as she's called, Stevie Turner. They were talking, and then they outside Ava's office, outside Ava's office, they all hear yelling and carrying and arguing back and forth, and Ava opens the door, and it's Luca and Tony arguing back and forth about how Tony can't trust him. What was that in the ring? What are you trying to do? And then we got Izzy Dame in her match against Izzy Dame here. She picks up the win over Zarya. As Tatum Paxley came out to the ring and mid-match, so Sol Ruca is outside the ring. She's the NXT Women's North American Champion. She's outside the ring, she's cheering Zarya on, and out comes Tatum. And Tatum Paxley, inopportune time to try and get a friendly hug, right? Inopportune time. I was like, what is she doing? What is Tatum Paxley doing? And that distracts Zarya, allowing Izzy Dame to pick up the victory over Zarya, and costing Zarya her chance to move on in the tournament. Then we got Inamura and Briggs in the back, and Briggs, he was very happy for Inamura. He was just hyping him up like, dude, I can't believe you won that. That was amazing. And over the TNA World Heavyweight Champion Trick Williams, and Inamura said to Briggs, said Briggs should take the TNA World Title match against Trick Williams. He deserves it. But then Briggs, and he said, and he will take the NXT title match. So Inamura wants Briggs to take the match against Trick Williams, and then Inamura will take the match against Obafemi for the NXT Championship. And then we got the final. We got the match for the final spot for the Women's Fatal 4-Way next week, featuring Lola Vice and Jordan Grace. And this was a really good match. A lot of power moves, a lot of Lola's background in the kickboxing and the MMA, from UFC, formerly from UFC, and it was really good. Jordan Grace picks up the win here, and unfortunately, yes, I'm going to say it, Jordan Grace has been death-rebelled. She no longer has her TNA theme. She has been death-rebelled. And I I was just like, seriously, they have def rebelled Jordynne Grace. But Jordynne Grace picks up the win in the number one. So in the number one contenders match, fatal 4-way match to determine who will face Jacy Jayne at Evolution. It's going to be Izzy Dame, Jaden Parker, Lash Legend, and Jordynne Grace next week. And then we got Sol Roca and Zarya and Tatum Paxley backstage. And Zarya, she's yelling at Paxley, like, what were you doing? You cost me the match. And Izzy Dame walks up and just and tells Tatum, you know, how little Sol Roca and Zarya care about her. And you know, and if Tatum joined the culling, they would make sure that Tatum was involved, because Zarya and Sol Roca obviously don't want to include Tatum Paxley. Then after that, Blake Monroe made her way to the ring to sign her NXT contract and make it official. And after the ad break, we got a little video package from Noam Dar talking about his record time as the Heritage Cup champion, and at over 800 days. And then we get the graphic for the match for the Heritage Cup Championship next week between Noam Dar and Stax. And unfortunately, I like Noam Dar, but I don't like Noam Dar's chances against Stax, because we know that Stax is a dirty player. You know, we know what he did to Tony D'Angelo, Tony D, and so we know that Stax and his cronies are gonna be part of the match. They're gonna try and interfere, and there's gonna be some shenanigans, of course. And then we got the announcement that it has been made official by the TNA Director of Authority, Santino Marella, that Trick Williams will defend the TNA World Heavyweight Championship next week on NXT against Josh Briggs. Okay, I like this. Then we got a video from earlier in the night of the 6-man tag and Inamura picking up the win. And then finally, after all the commercials, everything, all the ad breaks, all that stuff, we finally got Blake Monroe signing her NXT contract and making it official. And so Ava's in the ring, and Blake Monroe makes her entrance to sign her NXT contract. And as Blake Monroe signed her contract, of course, Fatal Influence interrupts, and they tell Blake Monroe, that hey, that Jacy Jayne and Fatal Influence run the NXT Women's Division, and then to end NXT, we get a double choke slam by Fallon Henley and JC Jane to Blake Monroe through the table, and that is how NXT ends. So this overall was a really good episode of NXT, full of a lot of action, and kind of just as I watched of it. I mean, seems like in my opinion NXT's been on fire lately. But if I have one criticism of NXT, less ad breaks. I mean, I don't mind the split screen, of NXT still going on with the ad break. I don't mind that. Less backstage stuff. Less backstage segments. Cut it down. Cut them down. Especially when you have wrestlers in the ring. In the ring already. And you do like two or three backstage segments in like 5 minutes. I mean, hoy! That is what gets me. That's what got me. But hey guys, let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions on NXT in the comment section down below. That's it for this episode of the Hollywood Steve Wrestling Podcast. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Remember, we're near Hollywood Steve. It's just too sweet.